Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the wildly complex, completely fascinating evolution of W.B. Yeats. We're going to be looking closely at his shifting relationship with romanticism. And let me tell you, this isn't just your standard story of an artist finding his voice and coasting. No, it's about tracking how an artist's relationship to tradition develops, completely fractures, and then radically transforms over the course of a lifetime. It is a wild ride. Now, since you're already familiar with the basics, you know Romanticism was essentially that early 19th century movement that celebrated the spiritual life of nature, right? It injected poetry with this really powerful prophetic energy. And for young Yeats, his artistic DNA was basically built on two massive pillars from this era: the fierce idealism of Percy Bysshe Shelley and the deep esoteric mysticism of William Blake. Those two forces were absolutely foundational for him.
Okay, here's our roadmap for the explainer. We'll hit the spiral of tradition, trace his romantic youth, unpack that huge modernist pivot, witness his prophetic return, and wrap up with how he ended up reinventing the past.
All right, jumping right into part one, the spiral of tradition. So, an artist's relationship to their roots isn't just some boring straight line. It's messy. It pushes back on itself. And this perfectly illustrates Yeats's own philosophical obsession, the gyre. For Yeats, creative evolution doesn't move in a flat, repetitive circle. It moves in a gyre, a spiral. The artist goes out, wanders, and eventually circles back. But, and here's the kicker, they don't just return to exactly where they started. As the spiral retreats, it actually ascends to a higher, entirely reinvented level. Keep this shape in your head, because it's literally the master key to his whole career. Moving right along to section 2, the romantic youth. To really track this insane evolution across the decades, we're going to use 3 heavy-hitter poems as our mile markers: the Lake Isle of Inisfree in the 90s, September 1913 at the turn of the century, and Byzantium from his later years. Through these 3, we can literally watch his relationship to romanticism just completely warp and shift. Starting in the 1890s, we get his smash hit, the Lake Isle of Inisfree. It is basically peak romanticism. At the time, Yeats said he wanted nothing but pure emotion wrapped in the simplest language possible. Now, ironically, he actually ended up cringing at this poem later in life because it was just so sentimental. But back then, he was totally all in. I mean, the guy was even styling his ties to look like Lord Byron's. Just listen to the vibe of this language. He keeps repeating, "I will arise and go now." That soft, incredibly rhythmic phrasing, it's a direct, intentional echo of the prodigal son parable from Luke's gospel. It's so elevated, so archaic, and it perfectly captures that classic romantic mood. A young, exhausted artist just desperate to escape the world and find some inner peace. And we know exactly where he got the blueprint for that escape. If you look at his imagery next to the American transcendentalist Henry David Thoreau, the fingerprints are everywhere. Thoreau's Walden was a huge inspiration here. Those 9 bean rows Yeats is dreaming about lifted straight from Thoreau's actual bean garden. It's that classic romantic urge to just say, you know what, I'm gonna go be a hermit in the woods and find true wisdom. But, well, reality has a way of hitting hard. Section 3. The Modernist Pivot. That soft, dreamy idealism just could not survive the brutal political realities of the early 1900s. The 1913 Dublin lockout was an absolute game-changer for him. Yeats is watching this new, pious, mercantile middle-class conservatism take over Ireland, and he felt it totally betrayed the grand revolutionary spirit of the past. Suddenly, Shelley's beautiful idealism felt completely useless for dealing with actual gritty political trauma. Which brings us to his absolute mic-drop refrain in the poem September 1913. He writes, "Romantic Ireland's dead and gone. It's with O'Leary in the grave." He literally hammers this phrase over and over. It is a stark, definitive breakup text to his romantic youth. We are watching him pivot right here into a disillusioned, sharp-elbowed modernist poet. Seriously, just put the language side by side. He aggressively trades that lush biblical, "I will arise and go now," for brutal colloquial reality. Now he's writing about people who fumble in a greasy till and add the halfpence to the pence. The meter is tight, it's conversational, and it is driven by this almost harsh modernist directness. But remember the gyre. Section 4, the prophetic return. Great artists don't just torch their roots forever, they spiral back to them. By 1933, with his late poem Byzantium, Yeats finds this spectacular solution to all that middle-aged bitterness. Instead of just wallowing in nostalgia or complaining about the present, he makes a massive conceptual leap. He shifts from quiet, romantic introspection into full-blown apocalyptic prospection. He stops looking back and starts looking powerfully, fiercely forward. I mean, listen to the sheer power of this line. That dolphin torn, that gong-tormented sea. Wow, he is reclaiming that incredible descriptive talent of his youth, the guy who gave us the peaceful Be Loud glade. But now, he's cranked the volume all the way up to a terrifying, prophetic roar. The romanticism isn't dead. It's been forged into steel. He pulls off this masterpiece by ditching the passive navel-gazing and embracing an apocalyptic modernist voice. But look at what's in his toolbox. He's literally channeling William Blake's prophetic fire. He's pulling Shelley's tower symbolism right back out of the archives, which, side note, he realized also mapped onto Aquinas and Swedenborg. And the whole thing operates on the mechanics of that metaphysical gyre. By smashing these early romantic ideals together into a totally fresh vision, Yeats basically becomes the hinge that creates modernism itself. Which leads us to the big payoff. Section 5, Reinventing the Past. The brilliant scholar Richard Ellman completely nailed how this dynamic worked for Yeats. Think about a spiral staircase. If you look at it from a bird's eye view, straight down, what do you see? A flat circle, right? It looks like you're just walking in a loop. But when you step back into a 3D perspective, you realize it's not a flat circle at all. It's an ascending staircase. You're covering the same ground, but you are moving upward, constantly reinventing yourself. And that right there is the absolute core lesson of Yeats's career. Great artists don't just delete their history. Yeats didn't abandon Shelley and Blake, he repurposed them. He took the DNA of his romantic youth and adapted it to handle the brutal complexities of the modern world. He proves that true creative growth isn't about escaping where you came from. It's about using the raw materials of your past to build a much stronger, much higher structure. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to bounce this idea back to you, looking at your own life, your own work. When the world shifts and gets challenging, the instinct is often to run from where we started. But based on what we've seen today, here is my question for you. How will you use the traditions and the history of your own past to construct an ascending staircase for your future? Thanks for hanging out, and keep climbing that spiral.